February 23rd, 1945, Iwo Jima. 10:30 a.m. Airfield number 1. The battlefield was a nightmare of smoke, fire, and volcanic ash. For 3 days, the Marines of the 21st Regiment had been pinned down, unable to advance across open ground. Every attempt ended the same way. Machine gun fire sweeping the field, mortars raining down, men collapsing one after another. It was here that Corporal Hershel Williams, a quiet farm boy from West Virginia, volunteered for what many believed was suicide. He was small in stature, just 5'6", but that morning he carried the heaviest burden of them all, a 68-pound flamethrower strapped to his back. A weapon of terror, but also one that turned its operator into a walking target. The previous flamethrower man had been killed only hours before, a bullet to the head while he was still carrying his tanks. His body lay in the dirt. Every Marine knew what stepping forward meant. And yet, what he did. Later he would explain it simply. We couldn't stay there forever. Men were dying for nothing. Someone had to do it. For the next 4 hours, Williams became a one-man assault team, with 4 riflemen protecting him and 2 Sherman tanks laying down, covering fire. He crawled across the battlefield. Inch by inch, shell hole to shell hole, he worked his way toward the Japanese pillboxes. These were no ordinary bunkers. They were masterpieces of engineering. Reinforced concrete walls 4 feet thick, interconnected tunnels, ventilation systems designed to withstand even flamethrowers. Built under the direction of General Kurabayashi, Iwo Jima had become one vast fortress. 21,000 Japanese soldiers had spent 8 months carving 11 miles of tunnels into the volcanic rock, turning the island into a labyrinth of death. And now, all of that stood between the Marines and Airfield number 1. Williams' first approach took nearly an hour. Machine guns roared whenever he moved, pinning him down. Most men would have given up, crawled back to safety. But Williams waited. 10 minutes. 15. Until the enemy gunners thought he was gone. Then he moved again. At just 35 yards, he fired his first burst. Not a long spray of fire, just a quick jet, enough to blind the defenders and make them shift positions. In that moment, he circled, closing in from a new angle. Flames roared through the aperture, and the first pillbox went silent. He didn't stop. Instead of retreating to refuel, as doctrine demanded, Williams kept going, crawling, waiting, striking, again and again. Marines watching from the rear thought he'd been killed more than once, only to see him rise from the smoke and crawl forward. By the end of his assault, the stalemate was broken. The 21st Marines advanced more than 300 yards, ground they could not have taken without him. Whether it was 3 pillboxes destroyed or 7, doesn't matter. What matters is that one Marine, armed with nothing but a flamethrower and unshakable courage, changed the battle for Iwo Jima. The battlefield was smoke and chaos. But where others saw only confusion, Woody Williams saw opportunity. He realized something the Japanese had never expected. Their underground tunnel network, the great strength of their defense, could be turned against them. With every short burst of fire, smoke poured into the tunnels. The same ventilation shafts designed to protect them from flamethrowers now betrayed them, choking the defenders with heat and fumes. Williams began using the weapon not just for destruction, but for deception. He would strike one firing port, then quickly shift to another, giving the impression of multiple attackers. Japanese soldiers faced a terrible choice: suffocate in the tunnels or flee into the open, where Marine rifles and Sherman tanks waited. And then came his boldest innovation. He learned that many pillboxes built to sweep the approaches at ground level had blind spots on top. Exposing himself to unimaginable danger, Williams sometimes climbed onto the very roofs of the pillboxes, firing through ventilation ports the enemy thought were safe. It was a tactic no manual had taught, born in the middle of battle. But Woody wasn't alone. For riflemen, names lost to history covered him at every step. They fought their own desperate fight, suppressing machine guns, keeping heads down, buying him seconds to get close. Without them, Woody's courage would have meant nothing. Together, they formed an unspoken rhythm. When he crawled left, they shifted right. When he charged forward, they unleashed covering fire. His personal war became a team effort of survival and instinct. By 12:45 p.m., Woody stumbled back to friendly lines. His tanks were empty. His uniform was torn, burned, splattered with shrapnel. He had destroyed at least 2 positions. By any measure, he had done more than enough. The exact number of bunkers destroyed will always be debated. Some say 7. Others insist on 3 or 4. Even Woody himself admitted that much of that day was a blur, lost to the chaos of survival. But numbers don't matter. What matters is that one man proved the Japanese fortifications could be beaten. The price was high. Woody lost 20 pounds in 4 hours. His body overheated dangerously. His hands were scorched. His hearing permanently damaged. And the memories, those never left. Decades later, he admitted, "People think courage means not being afraid. That's wrong. I was terrified every second. 40 years later, I still smell it in my dreams." On October 5, 1945, President Truman placed a Medal of Honor around his neck, telling Williams, "I'd rather have this medal than be president." To which Woody, half-joking, replied, "Sir, I'll trade you." But the legacy of that day wasn't the medal. It was the doctrine his actions inspired. Within 24 hours, new Marine flamethrower tactics were circulating: short bursts, use of smoke, unpredictable movement, exploiting ventilation systems. His battlefield improvisation became military teaching. The Japanese had believed their defenses were impregnable. Woody Williams shattered that belief in 4 hours. The tactics Williams invented on that black sand battlefield did not vanish when the shooting stopped. They spread, first among his own unit, then across the entire Marine Corps. Smoke was no longer just a cover. It became a weapon equal to flame. Attacking fortifications from angles the enemy never expected became doctrine. And in time, these lessons shaped not only the Battle of Iwo Jima, but the invasion of Okinawa, and the very manuals used to train Marines for generations to come. To understand the scale of his achievement, you need to understand the island itself. Iwo Jima, just 8 square miles of volcanic rock, became one of the bloodiest killing grounds of the Pacific War. In 36 days of fighting, 6,821 Americans would die. Another 19,000 were wounded. The Japanese, following General Kurabayashi's order to fight to the last man, lost nearly everyone. Out of more than 20,000 defenders, just 1,083 were captured alive, most of them unconscious. Why sacrifice so much for a barren strip of rock? Because of its airfields. B-29 bombers striking Japan needed an emergency landing point. Fighters launched from Iwo Jima could finally escort them deep into enemy territory. Historians later estimated the island saved nearly 25,000 American airmen from dying at sea. And at a moment when Marines were bleeding out on the approaches to Airfield Number 1. When the question was being asked whether the island could be taken at all, it was Williams who broke the stalemate. His 4-hour assault didn't just burn bunkers. It restored momentum, and with it, hope. After the war, Hershel Woody Williams returned home to West Virginia. He worked for the Veterans Administration for more than 3 decades, helping men like himself navigate the maze of bureaucracy to claim their benefits. He married Ruby, raised 2 daughters, and built a life in the quiet hills. But like so many who had survived the inferno, Woody carried invisible wounds. Nightmares, flashbacks, guilt, what we now call PTSD. Instead of hiding from it, he fought it the only way he knew, head-on. He founded one of the first peer counseling programs for combat veterans. He testified before Congress. "We train men to do terrible things in war," he told lawmakers in 1975, "and then we expect them to forget when they come home. It doesn't work that way." In his later years, Woody dedicated himself to honoring others. Through his foundation, he helped build over 100 Gold Star memorial monuments across America, reminders of the families who paid the ultimate price. And yet, he never stopped grappling with what he had done. In interviews, he spoke with brutal honesty. Every man in those bunkers was someone's son, maybe a husband, a father. They were soldiers just like me. But if I hadn't cleared those bunkers, hundreds of Marines would have died. So I chose to be the monster, so others wouldn't have to be. For Woody, heroism wasn't about glory. It was about burden, about carrying the weight of terrible necessity so that others could live. Even decades later, his story continued to evolve. At the 70th anniversary of Iwo Jima, in 2015, Woody met one of the last surviving Japanese veterans. 2 old warriors, once mortal enemies, shook hands on the same black sand where they had once tried to kill each other. A moment of reconciliation, 7 decades in the making. Woody Williams lived to be 98 years old. In 2022, he passed away, the last living Medal of Honor recipient of World War II. His casket lay in honor beneath the U.S. Capitol dome, a tribute reserved for America's most distinguished sons. But his true legacy wasn't the medal or even the battle. It was the honesty with which he spoke about war. The courage to admit that the hardest part wasn't surviving the battlefield. It was surviving the memories. War isn't glorious, he told schoolchildren late in life. It's not like the movies. It's doing terrible things because the alternative is worse. I'm not proud of burning those bunkers. I'm proud that I helped my fellow Marines survive. There's a difference. And in those words lies the real measure of a hero. Not someone who loves war, but someone who hates it and still finds the strength to do what must be done. On that day in February 1945, Hershel Woody Williams carried a flamethrower across Iwo Jima. But for the rest of his life, he carried something far heavier, the weight of necessary violence, born with dignity, honesty, and an unshakable devotion to peace.